stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition, yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets, the traffic starts jumping. The folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5. What a way to make a living. Barely getting by. It's all taking and no giving. Just use your mind. They never give you credit. Some cause that crime you.
Welcome back to Office Hours Live. And Dolly Parton, wherever you are, even if you don't want to contact me, that's perfectly okay. I just hope you're listening and you know that we love your music and we love you. It's been a hard week, folks, and it's not just what has happened around the country, the tragic events in Minneapolis and also in Louisiana and in Dallas. I hope you've had a chance to look. Yesterday, Professor Karen Martin and I here on this page had a long and I think very, very important discussion. She is brilliant. She is an expert with regard to police activity and criminal justice. If you can look on this page and find that, I hope it helps you understand what's going on. But undoubtedly, the country is deeply divided in the sense of not knowing exactly what to do. There are forces that would like to divide us even more, and we must fight those forces. Today I want to talk to you about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, the future of the progressive movement. Let me just again suggest to you that you tell others that we are live. You share this right now with others because there is something different about being live than not being live. And I will be getting to your questions in about 15 minutes. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Let me also suggest that up in this corner you press something that will alert you when we are going live. And I don't know whether it works. People tell me it does work, but do it anyway. I thought that maybe it would be helpful if I actually went up to the whiteboard to talk about the future of the progressive movement, because this is sort of it's a special time. It is a special day. This does mark the official end of Bernie Sanders' campaign. He did endorse Hillary Clinton this morning. Many of you Bernie supporters who have done huge amounts of work over the last 8 months, year and a half, some of you are very disappointed and disconcerted and frustrated. And I have to admit to you, I share some of that frustration as well. I endorsed Bernie because Bernie represented to me where we needed to go as a country. I said when I endorsed him that although Hillary Clinton, I believe, will make an excellent president for the system we now have, Bernie Sanders would be ideal for the system we need. And I still believe that. But let me just talk to you a little bit about this, and it helps me if I'm standing next to a whiteboard. I don't know if you can still see me. Can you still see me? I'm still there. We do these videos all the time, and some of you write me and you say, do you really do the drawing? Well, yes, I actually do the drawing. I don't do the drawing that fast, but I do. I do the drawing. I do it slightly more slower than you may be used to seeing, and I occasionally put in some accents. But the issue that I want to talk to you about is not only the Bernie campaign and what it represents, but what it represents for the future of the progressive movement. Because Bernie would be the first to say to you, and the first to admit that his campaign was really not about Bernie. It was about the progressive movement. It was about putting issues sharply, clearly before the public and getting mobilized and organized and energized around those issues. So even though we don't have Bernie as a candidate any longer, we still have these issues. We still have a progressive movement. But that depends on you. Even this morning I've heard from a number of you who say, why even bother? The system is so corrupt, I'm giving up. Or my children have devoted all of their time and attention over the last 8 months to Bernie Sanders, and they are now so cynical, they just want to go back and wallow in their cynicism and get out of politics. That's the wrong attitude. What we have to do, and I say this as somebody who has spent the last 45, 50 years fighting these fights, what we have got to do is renew our resolve. Bernie contributed a great deal, and the campaign helped a great deal in terms of, number one, and very, very important, making sure that people understood the relationship between democracy and inequality. Because, you see, there is a huge relationship. The more the wealthy, and here I'm going to do a little caricature, it's just a caricature. You know, it's just a caricature of the wealthy. But the more the wealthy are able to control through their wealth, and here, this is just a caricature. I don't mean this literally. But the more they are able to control through their wealth, politicians and the media and other influencers, and the more the wealthy are able to have the political system respond simply to them because they have so much wealth, that means that, and here are the politicians, that means that people are disenfranchised. The rest of us have no voice. And it's not just Citizens United. It was happening even before Citizens United. I remember when Washington, D.C. was a rather seedy city. There was not huge wealth coming into Washington, D.C., but it's changed over the last 50 years. And so we've got to fight this. Bernie Sanders' campaign enabled more and more Americans to understand the relationship between concentrated income and wealth and concentrated political power. And the more people who see that, and see that one of the major negative consequences of excessive inequality in our system is political corruption, in terms of campaign contributions and lobbyists, in terms of all that money flowing into Washington, even into so-called think tanks of experts that are doing the bidding of the wealthy, the more that happens, the less voice all the rest of us have. This other thing that we've got to understand, and Bernie Sanders' campaign enabled us to understand, is that young people and again, a caricature here. Here's a caricature of a young person. Young people were the cornerstone of Bernie Sanders' campaign, even to a greater extent than Barack Obama's campaign in 2008. Those young people are the future. Now, I don't mean this, I say this as somebody who is no longer a young person. Well, I know I feel young, and I know that I act very young, but I'm no longer young. But the future is young people, and the more politically active they are, the more politically engaged they are, the more they actually take control in the sense of feeling their efficacy. My generation had the benefit of the civil rights movement and also the anti-Vietnam War movement, and we felt that we were effective politically. Young people today don't feel that. Bernie Sanders' campaign enabled a lot of people. Yes, the campaign is over. He did not get the nomination, but he won. He won 22, 23 primaries. He had an extraordinary effect. And young people, a majority of the voters were young. In fact, more young people voted for Bernie Sanders than voted for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump together. So here, too, there is a very important lesson. The other point I wanted to make, and it sort of ties these two together, is that political mobilization is really the issue. And what Bernie Sanders also showed us is that it is possible to run a campaign not being dependent on the big money, but being dependent on small donations. It's no longer possible for a candidate to say, oh, I believe in campaign finance reform, but I am not going to actually subscribe to campaign finance reform in this election because I don't want to have one hand tied behind my back. That's what they always do. That's what they always say. Don't want to have one tied behind my back because my opponent is not subscribing to campaign finance reform. Well, what Bernie showed is it is possible to almost make it with regard to small by relying on small donations. Critically important. And so what I want to emphasize with all of you is the critical importance of maintaining the fight. And that fight is not going to be over. It is not going to be over. It would not even be over if Bernie Sanders became the president, because the only way anybody in Washington does the right thing and has the power to do the right thing is if the public is mobilized and organized and energized to push people in Washington to do the right thing. And so let's hope Hillary Clinton becomes the next president. Donald Trump would be a complete menace. We all understand that. But even if Hillary Clinton becomes president, and even if the Democrats take back the Senate and possibly even the House, that's just the beginning of it. We have got to organize ourselves. We've got to make sure that we keep pressure on. You understand what I'm saying? Keeping the pressure on, not succumbing to cynicism, not succumbing to defeatism. I know that's hard right now, and a lot of you may be feeling cynical and may be feeling defeated, but you must not. I can say from a personal standpoint, I mean, I was in the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton administration, and it was hard going. I'm going to sit down now. Are you still with me? You still here? I was in the Clinton administration. It was not easy going inside the administration. I remember when, for example, welfare reform was being debated, Bill Clinton was very tempted to go along with some draconian proposals that the Republican Congress were sending to him. And even though I and other people inside the administration said don't do it, there was not enough pressure from the outside saying don't do it. And ultimately, in 1996, Bill Clinton did go along with so-called welfare reform, which has been very, very destructive. We have many more poor children today, in part because of that so-called welfare reform. I'm not saying the old welfare system was good, but we could have had a much better welfare system if people were organized and mobilized. And the same thing goes with regard to single payer. The same thing with regard to tuition-free public higher education, or busting up the big banks, or resurrecting Glass-Steagall. Any of the issues that Bernie Sanders put on the table, it is up to us to continue to mobilize and to organize around them. And finally, let me just say one thing about a third party. And I'm very interested in having your views on this, because I think the Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, is similar in one respect. They're just big fundraising machines. They're not really, the way we used to think about political parties 40, 50, 60 years ago was they were organizations organized from the bottom up. They had very vital local and city and town organizations. They had state organizations that met as a whole. Many, many people were involved. And by the time you got to a convention, a nominating convention, or even to the Democratic National Committee or the Republican National Committee, that was just the top of a very multi-layered bottom-up organization. That's not the case any longer. Our parties are fundraising machines. And if the Democratic Party doesn't respond, continues to act as if it is still just a fundraising machine, then we are going to need a third party. Not now, not before November. I don't want to run the risk, as you don't, of having Donald Trump become president because we're not united. But after November, I think it's important for us to seriously consider having a third party that is going to field and recruit candidates and support progressive candidates, mostly Democrats, but maybe they would be the new progressive party candidates in primaries and also in general elections. So think about it. There's still time to think about it. I just want to end this pre-oration by telling you that it's not the end. It is really, in many, many important respects, the beginning. Bernie and all of you who supported Bernie, and I like to think myself included, we laid a foundation for progressive politics in the future, but it goes beyond progressive politics. It's not just progressive politics. Hopefully, it's a kind of wave of populism and progressivism that even affects independents and many so-called Republicans who are sick and tired of crony capitalism, of business as usual. And I believe, in the end, our democracy and our economy and our way of life depends upon us prevailing, restoring our democracy, restoring an economy that's working for all of us. But it can happen only if you and I and millions of others continue to fight for it. All right? All right, now your questions. And I hope you have some questions, because otherwise I get the feeling I'm just talking to myself. Ivona Noki, would you consider leading the new Progressive Party? Yes or no? If there was a new Progressive Party and I was needed, sure. Linda Crump, how deep does the corruption in Washington run? Is it all-encompassing? Linda, I did use the term corruption. I don't mean corruption in the sense that politicians have their hand out and take bribes and put the money in their pockets for their own personal uses. The corruption I'm talking about, and you see this as well as I do, I'm sure, is that politicians have their hands out. They get money to maintain their power. And that form of corruption is much more insidious, because they know that the only way they can maintain power, or at least they think the only way they can maintain power, is if they continue to have their hand out. And because inequality is widening, we're now in a new Gilded Age, more and more of that potential money, or real money, is coming from very wealthy people, or from big corporations, or from Wall Street. That's the essence of the corruption. Marion Bergman, what do you say to those of us who feel that Bernie betrayed us by endorsing Hillary? Marion, I think I can understand why you might feel that way. My response to you is that Bernie tried as hard as he could. I know him very well. And he tried to push the Democrats and Hillary and the Democratic platform in the direction that he believed in and what he represented in the campaign. And he, to some extent, had some success. Now, I don't want to overstate it, because you know as well as I do that the Democratic platform is just a platform, and candidates are not bound by it. But betrayal, no. I don't think Bernie betrayed the cause, and I don't think he betrayed any of us. If anything, he withstood an extraordinary amount of heat in doing so. Sasan Parzadeh, do you think Bernie will now continue to identify as a Democrat after the election, or return to an independent for his senatorial career? I suspect he's going to continue to be an independent. He will caucus with Democrats, vote with Democrats, but I would suspect that he reverts to what he believes. And I think he believes that being an independent gives him sort of more authority and more of a moral integrity. Wilberto Barrana, why didn't Bernie endorse Jill Stein? Wilberto, I can't tell you what was in Bernie's mind, but I can tell those of you who want to vote for Jill Stein. I don't know Jill Stein very well. I admire what I have heard of her these many years that she has run the Green Party and she has been a candidate. My fear, and it's just a fear, is that the more votes don't go to Hillary Clinton, the easier it is for Donald Trump to triumph. I'm not suggesting that every single vote for Jill Stein is a vote for, in effect, Donald Trump. I am merely suggesting to you that when you have votes that are going to a third party whose ideology is, let's say, to the left of the Democratic candidate, those are votes that otherwise might have gone to the Democratic candidate. Rachel Gorin, why isn't the Green Party the third party, the progressive party you're talking about? Rachel, because the Green Party has not made inequality and the erosion of our democracy its central tenet. Tori Matthews, this past week I felt so sad with the state of America, with the shootings of black men and police. How do we get out of the cycle of hate and violence? Tori, there's no easy answer for that. I think the vast majority of Americans are sick at heart with regard to that violence. I mean, the good news, as Karen Martin said yesterday when I interviewed her here on this page, is that those videos, those horrifying videos, and everything that followed from them have raised the consciousness of many Americans about the reality of police violence, particularly against blacks, and not incidentally Latinos. And that raised consciousness of white Americans as to the racism that is implicit. And we're not talking about, Karen was talking not about explicit, but implicit, almost unconscious racism. That becomes easier to combat, easier to respond to, the more it is made explicit, the more we all understand it, we who are white. Last case, why didn't Bernie wait until the convention to endorse Hillary like he promised? Lance, I cannot answer that. I don't know. I, in some ways, wish he had. I expected him to. As you know, I talked at length and posted about the importance of him waiting until the actual nomination. And then I said at that point, if Hillary is the nominee, we should all very much get behind her. I think that he was under a great deal of pressure, and maybe he felt that he didn't want to take any risk with regard to Donald Trump. Craig Williamson, Professor Reich, could you provide an overview of the steps to creating a progressive third party and key players you see in forming it after the November election? Well, Craig, I think Bernie is going to be a very key player. He has, for example, the list of all of the email addresses of all the contributors to him. That is a starting place. And what he does with that email address list is very, very important. I'm intending to talk to him about the possibility of a third party and him being maybe the chairman of it. I haven't been able to get through to him yet. He's had other things on his mind. But beyond Bernie, there are some mechanical things that have to be done in terms of making sure that the party is registered and registered in every state. Those aren't nearly as challenging as simply developing a large group of people who feel that it is their responsibility in turn to bring other people along. John Monarchy. Robert! Exclamation point. Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. Robert, are you as tired of all these childish temper tantrums from the Bernie and bust purists as I am? They don't even listen to their own leader. John, I think that feelings are running very high on both sides here. They have been for quite some time. I've got friends who are very loyal Hillary supporters. I've got very dear friends who are Bernie or busters, and I hear from them almost every day, and they are angry at each other. And what I keep telling them is we've got to come together. We've got to come together to get back the Senate, to get back the House if possible, certainly to maintain the presidency. And I hate to keep on using Donald Trump as the reason, and Donald Trump is not the sole reason, obviously. There is an agenda here, but Donald Trump would be an absolute menace to our society. Andy Kranz-Cloutier, did Bernie just give the election to Trump? No. Next. John Connor Milne. Did I get that right, John? You have 3 names, John Connor Milne. Jill Stein, the Green Party. Please, will you endorse? No. Jack O'Day. Is it O'Day? O'Day. Robert, would you ever consider running for Senate in Connecticut? No. In California? I might. We have 2 questions left. Only 2 questions left? Patrick Vogel, what do you think of Starbucks giving their workers a 5% raise? Good or not good enough? Patrick, it's a move in the right direction. I don't think it's good enough, but it is certainly a move in the right direction. You may have seen today that the CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein, also decided to give his workers who are near the minimum wage a raise. And when I read that, I thought, good for you, Goldman Sachs. That'll be a rounding error on your next financial report. But I don't mean to be cynical about this. I think all companies not only have to give all of their workers in the bottom 50% of the workforce a raise, but provide them more security as well, and also treat them as assets to be developed rather than as costs to be cut. We have gone so far off track in terms of the basic tenets of American capitalism, thinking that the sole purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder returns, when in fact the role of the corporation is to make our society and its inhabitants better off in all respects, including workers, including communities. I think we can get back on that track, but it's going to take a great deal of work. All right, we really do have 2 more questions. Jack Harris. Robert Reich, you really think she going to change anything? Really? We're talking about Hillary Clinton, Jake, I suppose. I think that if she is pushed, she will. But it takes you and I and millions of other people to push her. And I'm reminded of what, and you may not remember, and I don't remember literally, but Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1936 election, when somebody came up and said, Mr. President, I want you, if reelected, to do this, this, and this, and this. And he said, I'd like to do that, but you must make me. You understand? Even if Bernie were elected, it would be almost impossible for him to get stuff done unless all of us were organized and mobilized to get it done. We've got to push Hillary very hard. And then Rona Beitler, is this, did I pronounce it correctly, Rona? I didn't. Beitler? I'm sorry, what can I do? You've been a wonderful teacher to all of us, sometimes impossible students. What teacher in your life do you hold most dear and why? Rona, what a sweet question to end with. I had a 6th grade teacher named Bill Javane who inspired me. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to start tearing up. And so on that note, I want to thank Zoe Beck, Zoe Umlaut Beck, and Yael Bridge. I want to thank all of you. Keep your courage. Keep your fighting spirit. Don't succumb to cynicism. See you next week.